each other. Today we gather to consider the nomination of Governor Kristi Noem to serve as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I hope this hearing will set the tone for this committee's work in the new Congress to restore transparency and accountability to an executive branch that has grown unchecked. Governor Noem, if confirmed, you will lead an agency that has lost its way. Your record as governor of South Dakota and a former member of Congress demonstrates your willingness to make difficult decisions in the face of significant political pressure and to put the interest of the American people first. You have the opportunity today to address how your background and vision will translate to leading one of the most critical and scrutinized departments in the federal government. This is the first of many consequential moments for this committee as we renew our commitment to the constitutional oversight role that Congress must assert. I have no doubt that the nominee will consider in the coming weeks and months that you will be up for the challenge. Governor Noem, thank you for your willingness to serve, and I yield to the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Paul. Governor Noem, it's great to see you here today, and I want to first thank you for making yourself available not only to the entire committee, but the discussions that we had in my office, going perhaps a little more in depth in the issues than is possible in a hearing like this, and having that open and frank conversation is something that I appreciate. I also appreciate your willingness to spend time with committee staff as we conduct our due diligence and review of your qualifications and a background to serve as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. As our third largest federal agency with more than 240,000 employees and an operating budget of more than $100 billion, the Department of Homeland Security requires strong, stable, and principled leadership. Our nation faces serious threats and security challenges, from securing our borders and combating terrorism to preventing cyber attacks and responding to our nation's increasing number of natural disasters. And DHS is the first line of defense in all of those areas. I appreciated the conversations we had at today's hearing where we discussed the importance of ensuring that our nation's borders are safe and secure. And while we must address the significant challenges we face on the southern border, we also need to ensure that there are sufficient resources to secure our northern border, something I know you're very familiar with as the governor of your state, including building out our Northern Border Mission Center. This is especially important in my home state of Michigan, which has two of the nation's busiest border crossings, and we're going to be adding another span shortly, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will open later this year. To facilitate the lawful trade and travel at those ports of entry that are absolutely critical to our economy, I've worked on legislation to hire additional U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers to meet increased staffing demands. We must secure our borders, but we also know it is well time past to streamline our immigration and our asylum process as well. In addition to border security, DHS is responsible for addressing many threats that face our nation. Just a few weeks ago, unfortunately, Americans were shocked to see two horrific incidents in New Orleans and Las Vegas, a deadly reminder that terrorism and radicalization remain very real and ongoing threats to our homeland. In my role on this committee, I've made combating foreign and domestic terrorism, as well as extremism, a top priority. In this complex environment, it is essential that DHS continue to focus on all terrorism threats, track and report data to Congress and to the American people, and coordinate between all components to ensure the department is effectively addressing all types of terrorist threats. We've also seen the persistent cyber attacks are still a very serious threat, in fact, an increasing threat. A recent attack from Chinese-based hackers infiltrated the Treasury Department, on top of ongoing Salt Typhoon hack that comprised numerous U.S. telecommunications companies. There's no question that DHS must continue to lead the way in protecting our networks from foreign adversaries, cyber criminals, and so-called hacktivists to prevent cyber attacks from becoming increasingly devastating to our security as well as to our economy. And finally, the Department of Federal Emergency Management Agency must continue to work hard to address the increasing number of natural disasters affecting our communities as a result of climate change. From violent storms like hurricanes that brought destruction to states across the South, to the devastating wildfires in California, and countless other severe storms and flooding events all across our country. We need leadership at the department that will ensure our nation effectively responds to communities when disaster strikes them. The safety and security of our nation and the American people depend on the department's ability to effectively address these wide-ranging threats. So, Governor Noem, thank you again for your willingness to serve in this incredibly important position. And thank you for being here today. I look forward to having a comprehensive discussion about how you intend to lead this critical department through a series of national security challenges, if indeed you are confirmed.
This morning, Governor Noem will be introduced by Majority Leader John Thune and Senator Kevin Cramer. Senator Thune, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Peters and members of the committee. I'm very pleased to be able to be here today to introduce South Dakota's outstanding governor, who has been nominated by President Trump to serve as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I've known Kristi Noem for a long time. She has a very compelling personal and family story, which inspired her entrance into the public arena, and I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about that from her. But I've observed as she has gone through the state legislature as a leader there, State House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives, where she was our only member from South Dakota, representing our state's interests there for 8 years, and now currently as South Dakota's governor. And I think she brings to this job a number of things that are going to be really essential. And one is obviously a skill set when it comes to managing hard problems. She led our state through the pandemic, managed what were extraordinary circumstances all across this country in a way that made South Dakota, frankly, a magnet for people from other states who were trying to flee or get away from some of the heavy-handed requirements that were imposed in other states around the country. Our state stayed open, stayed free, and that was largely due to her leadership. And I would say, too, as we tackle what is an enormously complicated and hard issue, which is our southern border, it's going to require a skill set, which I believe she possesses. It's going to require a tremendous amount of persistence and determination, which I think she has, an enormous amount of energy, which she has in abundance. And frankly, what I would say is just absolute toughness. It's going to take some tough and hard leadership to get things back in order. And I want to refer to something she said in her State of the State address earlier this week to South Dakotans, and that is that over the past 4 years, we've seen a complete disregard for the security of our borders and the safety of the American people, to say nothing for the rule of law. Chaos at our southern border and the Biden administration has left our country vulnerable to a whole host of security concerns, from terrorist entries to cross-border criminal activity like drug trafficking. I think it's well documented, and I think it's high time that it gets fixed. And we have somebody nominated by the president that I believe has the capabilities, the qualities, the experience, and again, frankly, the determination and toughness to solve what is a very, very tough issue, and one which is desperately in need of solutions. So I'm pleased to be able to be here today to introduce our great governor and to thank you for your consideration. I look forward to this committee acting on her nomination, and I look forward to voting for her on the floor of the United States Senate to be the next Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cramer.
Thank you, Chairman Paul, Ranking Member Peters, colleagues. Once again, I find myself in full agreement with the Majority Leader. It's a good place to be in our business. So this is a very special opportunity for me. And first thing I want to do is thank nearly all of you. I got into almost every one of your offices with Kristi as her very amateurish sitting Senator Sherpa. And the blessing for me was not only to be with my good friend and former colleague, but to learn a lot about this committee that I'm not on, and to get an inside view. And Gary, especially learning how we can work together at the northern border and how similar, although very different, Michigan and North Dakota are. So thank you for your hospitality. You were all very kind to Kristi and to me. But Kristi is a former colleague. You know, when you're the only member of a body of 435 from an entire state, it's really important to have friends. So together, Kristi and I were two out of 435. And if we could get Montana, Wyoming, and Alaska, there'd be 5 of us that could take on the fight. But I know this. I remember our very first year my first year, it was not hers, my first year in the House, the unthinkable happened and the House of Representatives failed to pass a farm bill. And all I can tell you was the least secure Homeland person in America was the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader the next day when Kristi and I doubled up and eventually we got a farm bill done. I say that because we are living at a time, and Senator Peters, you used the words strong, stable, and principled. I can't think of three better words to describe Kristi Noem than those three words. I would add this. I'm not surprised that President Trump turned to Governor Noem. Securing the homeland is the #1 priority, our #1 priority, our #1 constitutional priority as a Congress. And it is for sure the #1 priority of the voters in the last election. And it is the #1 priority for President Donald Trump. So naturally, he would say, who is the toughest, smartest, most capable protector that I know? I think I'd like to find a ranch woman, mom, grandmother who knows how to protect her own. And when you grow up on a ranch in the prairies or the West, nobody else is going to look out for your critters. No one else is protecting your family. You do it. And she brings this skill set, as Senator Thune said, as a leader, as a legislator, as a member of Congress, as a governor, a very important. By the way, when I'd get into the room with other governors, Senator Hassan, I might as well have just left because I was now part of a club where I don't belong. But anyway, it was very, very rich because there's an alliance there that's really, really important. And so for me, it's just a really special opportunity to be able to be here with her and to have had this time in your offices introducing her to you. But I want to wrap up because last night I received a very touching letter, unsolicited by either Kristi or me, from the tribal chairwoman from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, which straddles North Dakota and South Dakota. They don't really care who wins the South Dakota State, North Dakota State football game, but they do care about their reservation. And Chairwoman Alkire sent me this letter. Standing Rock is the home of Sitting Bull, in case you were wondering about the credentials of their ability to protect the homeland. I'll just read a few words. On multiple occasions, Governor Noem has invited the Standing Rock Sioux tribe to her table at the South Dakota State Capitol to enter into meaningful discussions. That's what I witnessed when she came to your offices. And Janet writes, it is of great excitement and enthusiasm that our North Dakota Governor, Doug Burgum, will be at the helm of the Department of Interior, and my hopes remain high that you will feel the same about Governor Kristi Noem at the helm of the Department of Homeland Security. These two governors understand the needs in Indian country and what words like tribal sovereignty, jurisdiction, and consultation mean to the indigenous people. Speaks volumes to her leadership and to her character. It's my honor to support her and turn it over to her.
Thank you for those great introductions. The committee has also received several statements in support of Governor Noem's nomination, including a letter from 22 fellow governors, the International Association of Firefighters, and 6 other organizations. Without objection, these letters of support will be made part of the hearing record. And I know our senators are going to have to go, but thank you for coming and doing those introductions. It's the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses. Governor Noem, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Governor Noem, you are now recognized for your opening statement.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chairman Paul, Ranking Member Peters, and the distinguished members of this committee. I'm honored to appear before all of you today as the nominee for the Secretary of Homeland Security. I want to thank President-elect Donald J. Trump for his confidence in my leadership, and the people of South Dakota for their fantastic support throughout my time in public service. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to Senator Kramer. He has been an invaluable resource to me throughout this process and given me much wisdom as well as insight into the thoughts and the procedures of the Senate and this body. And I'd also like to express my gratitude to Senator Thune, the majority leader of this esteemed body. He's been an advisor to me for many years as well as a friend, and I'm so grateful for the generous support of these two men and their willingness to be here this morning to speak on my behalf and to introduce me to this committee. Now, I'm a wife and a mother and a grandmother, a farmer, rancher, business person. I've served in our state legislature, in Congress for 8 years, and also a governor. I've spent my entire life in rural America. I understand what it means to work hard every single day and to build a better future for your kids and for all of our communities. I come before you today with a deep sense of responsibility and a humility as the nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security, and also a commitment to the more than 330 Americans who we will work together to help serve and to keep safe and secure in their homes and in their communities. Now, before I proceed, I want to introduce to you my husband, Brian, who's here with me today. He is my constant 24/7 reminder of our dedication to public service and that it's not a solo effort or done alone. He has been a rock by my side, and I appreciate all of his love over so many years. I'm grateful that he's here with me today. Now, securing our homeland is a serious, sacred trust that must be relentlessly pursued and can never be taken for granted. Being safe within our borders here in America is critical, and yet Americans feel less safe than they have felt in decades. For the first time in 30 years, more than 40% of Americans are afraid to walk alone at night within a mile of their homes. President-elect Trump is going to change that. I've seen firsthand the challenges and the opportunities facing our great nation. In the 20 years since the Department of Homeland Security was formed, the nature of the threats to our homeland has grown and they've evolved. This department was created in response to the failures of the government that led to the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. And that reality is not lost on me, especially in the wake of the recent terrorist attacks over New Year's. Now, I've led South Dakota for the last 6 years with a focus every day on making our state safer, stronger, and freer. I've focused every day on making the best decisions, not just for right now, but for generations to come. I've overseen a state budget of over $7 billion and a state employee workforce of more than 13,000, including more than 7,000 that report directly to the governor. I've addressed important issues like cybersecurity, human trafficking, drug interdiction, and also natural disasters, the same challenges that are facing so many of you and the people that you represent back home. I've secured our state and supported the rule of law. And if confirmed as the 8th Secretary, that is the same approach that I will take to leading the Department of Homeland Security. As we face the evolving threats of the 21st century, the mission and the success of DHS is more critical than ever. We must be vigilant and proactive and innovative to protect the homeland. The challenges in front of us are extremely significant, and we must secure our borders against illegal trafficking and immigration. We must safeguard our critical infrastructure to make sure that we're protected against cyber attacks, respond to natural disasters, and also terrorism. I firmly believe that we can meet those challenges head-on with resolve. Innovation, we can use collaboration with federal and with state partners. And, Senators, I want your input. Border security must remain a top priority. As a nation, we have the right and the responsibility to secure our borders against those who would do us harm. And we must create a fair and a lawful immigration system that is efficient and is effective and that reflects our values. President Trump was elected with a clear mandate. He needs to achieve this mission because 2/3 of Americans support his immigration and border policies, including the majority of Hispanic Americans. I was the first governor to send National Guard troops to our southern border when Texas asked for help and when they were being overwhelmed by an unprecedented border crisis. If confirmed as secretary, I'll ensure that our exceptional, extraordinary Border Patrol agents have all the tools and resources and support that they need to carry out their mission effectively. The same is true of my commitment to the outstanding men and women of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are responsible for apprehending, detaining, and deporting illegal immigrants. And getting criminal aliens off of our streets and out of the country will help American communities be safer again. The bravery and the dedication of the Border Patrol and ICE are unmatched, and I will restore dignity to their work. The rising threat of cyber attacks also demands our utmost attention, and our critical infrastructure, from energy grids to financial institutions, is under constant attack by foreign adversaries and criminal actors. As Secretary, I will prioritize a comprehensive, whole-of-government approach to cybersecurity. In fact, in the coming days, we have to plan bigger and think faster and smarter. I fully acknowledge that people in Washington, D.C. do not have all of the answers, and therefore I will leverage private-public partnerships. I'll advance cutting-edge, state-of-the-art technologies to protect our nation's digital landscape. And I will have a proven track record of doing this in South Dakota to back me up. I've helped make Dakota State University a global leader in cybersecurity education because we recognize the need to address this emerging threat. And I will take a proactive approach if given the opportunity to serve as Secretary. Now, President-elect Trump has been a tremendous friend to law enforcement over the years, and I will do the same in my role as Secretary. As Governor, I've worked closely with law enforcement to make South Dakota safer. I've overseen hundreds of state troopers in the South Dakota Highway Patrol, and on several occasions, I've convened groups of law enforcement from across our state to address policies that will make our people safer. In fact, while some in this country were attacking law enforcement and defunding them, we took the opposite approach in South Dakota. We recruited law enforcement officers to move to South Dakota, a state that respects their service and their sacrifice. And we revamped our law enforcement training to provide the first ever state-led, tribal-focused law enforcement training academy. I'm very proud of the work that we've done in cooperation with our tribes to help make their communities more safe. And we must remain vigilant against terrorism and against others who wish to do us harm to our country and to our great people. I'll ensure that our intelligence and our law enforcement agencies are working together hand in hand, that they're fully equipped to detect, prevent, and respond to threats from radical ideologies and foreign adversaries. This requires resources, coordination, and collaboration across all levels of government. And once again, I will seek your wisdom and I will seek your input into the months ahead. For the sake of the people that we both represent, we have to get this right. Now, I recognize that Homeland Security isn't just about prevention, but it's also about resilience. When disasters strike, as we know they will, the Department of Homeland Security must be ready to respond swiftly, efficiently, and effectively to protect the lives and the property of Americans. As governor, I've worked with FEMA in response to a dozen natural disasters in South Dakota. These have included historic floods, tornadoes, blizzards, wildfires, a derecho, and even a global pandemic. As Secretary, I will enhance our emergency preparedness and strengthen FEMA's capabilities, and we will ensure that no community is left behind, and that life-saving services like electricity and water are quickly restored. As Secretary, I will oversee the Secret Service, an agency that is in serious need of reforms. We all saw the threats to President-elect Trump last year and the consequences of failure. Now, that should never happen again. And I've worked closely with my own gubernatorial protective detail, and I'm familiar with what works and what doesn't work. And I'll bring that experience towards strengthening the Secret Service once again. I'm committed to working with this committee, with Congress, and with the dedicated men and women of the Department of Homeland Security to fulfill our mission. And together, we can ensure that the United States remains a beacon of freedom, safety, and security for generations to come. So thank you for the opportunity and the honor to appear before you today. Thank you for the meetings and the time that you took in your office to discuss the department and what we can do in the future to make the American homeland much more secure. I look forward to your questions, and I hope to earn your trust, and hopefully also your vote as we embark on this critical work together. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Governor Noem. We will now proceed to questions. Each member will have 7 minutes. We will have a vote that will start at 10 a.m., but we're going to continue the hearing and keep people in line as you come and go to vote. We'll keep the hearing moving. I want to be clear from the outset that we will not tolerate any disruptions. The Capitol Police have been asked to escort anyone immediately from the room if they disrupt the hearing. This is a standard question, Governor Noem, that we ask of all nominees. Governor Noem, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to reserve the rest of my time for my questions and go to Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Noem, the DHS Secretary has many competing priorities, as you well know, and you outlined certainly in your opening comments, from our borders to wildfires to cyber attacks. But as you and I discussed at length, and I appreciate you bringing it up in your opening comments as well, we do have a northern border in addition to a southern border. That's absolutely essential that the DHS has the resources necessary at the northern border to carry out its mission, both between ports of entry and all along the border. In fact, we've seen an increase in unauthorized crossings in recent years at the northern border. So my question for you is, if confirmed, do you commit to ensuring, along with the southern border, that the northern border is sufficiently staffed to maintain its security and robust trade between the U.S. and its neighbors, including at the Gordie Howe International Bridge in my home state of Michigan, have the resources they need to facilitate trade while keeping Americans safe?
Yes, Senator Peters, you and I talked about this in your office and also with Senator Slotkin as well, how important it is to continue to remain focused on our northern border and all borders and ports of entry that the United States has. I think there's been some universal concern from some of the committee members that as we focus on the southern border and what we're seeing as far as the invasion there and the amount of people crossing, that the northern border would lose focus. But that will not happen, and we will ensure that our borders are secure and we're addressing all threats that may come in from any direction. And also with the bridge as well and staffing up on that as well, and I've assured Senator Slotkin as well that our focus is there to make sure that it is staffed appropriately.
Very good. And as we discussed, the department is diligently working to stand up the Northern Border Mission Center at Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan, following the authorization and funding that I was able to secure in the last Congress. This center is critical to supporting the department's northern border security missions and addressing evolving threats. So quick question, if confirmed, do you commit to working with me to fully build out the Northern Border Mission Center?
Yes, Senator, we will look forward, and I look forward to working with you to ensure that that is a priority and that it's adequately resourced, and working with Congress and senators to make sure that we have what we need to make sure that that mission for that base is fully fulfilled.
Great, thank you. On New Year's, we witnessed two incidents that reminded us that terrorism and extremism remain serious threats to all Americans. Both DHS and the FBI have consistently said that the most persistent threat to the homeland is from U.S.-based individuals or small groups radicalized by a variety of ideologies, from white supremacy to ISIS to al-Qaeda. We must certainly continue to focus on people who are radicalized here in the United States with the intent of terrorizing our communities. So my question for you, ma'am, is how do you plan to address this threat of U.S.-based terrorists?
Senator, this is a grave concern for our country, as we all agree that the #1 threat to our homeland security is the southern border. In fact, since Joe Biden has been president, we've seen 382 individuals that have come over that border that are on the terrorist watch list. Behind me have the governor of Louisiana with me. And he and his state and people in this country went through a horrific event on New Year's Day, and one that we never want to see repeated again. But this governor behind me is concerned also about an upcoming event, which is the Super Bowl coming shortly, which we need to do all that we can to work together, that he has the reassurance that the federal government, that the Department of Homeland Security is prepared to help him protect that event and to keep people safe while they are there. Those 382 terrorists or known terrorists that have come over our border, we don't know necessarily where they are because of what has been happening under Joe Biden's policies. Now, President Trump obviously won the last election with a clear mandate, and that mandate is for the American people to secure that border. But also, we need to focus on domestic terrorism and homegrown terrorism, which you just referenced in your question. Homegrown terrorism is on the rise. We see more and more incidents of people that are U.S. citizens that have become radicalized, and knowing when people are leaving the country and coming back and changes to their behaviors and what their actions are is critically important. So the resources that the Department of Homeland Security has needs to be utilized as far as identifying those threats and being proactive to prevent them, but also protecting civil rights and liberties in that process and making sure that the department is on mission to do what it was called to do, why it was created, and what authorities that Congress and the Senate has given them. My hope is that Governor Landry and his staff and his people and the people that attend the Super Bowl know that the Department of Homeland Security is their partner, is on watch to protect them and to keep that event safe. I hope all Americans know that leadership has consequences. I hope that we can get through and get your support for this nomination and get confirmed quickly so that we can address the threats that we currently face and make sure we don't have any repeats of the day that we saw just starting this year on New Year's Day.
In the last 2 years, we have seen increasingly aggressive and expansive cyber attacks against our federal agencies. Just last month, Chinese hackers infiltrated the Department of Treasury and stole potentially thousands of unclassified documents. So given these concerning trends by the PRC to hold our federal networks hostage, do you believe that federal agencies should be required to implement cybersecurity upgrades and maintain the highest cybersecurity standards to protect sensitive or classified data and U.S. citizen information as well?
Well, Senator, the mission of CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, the mission of it is to hunt and harden. It's to find those bad actors and help work with local and state infrastructure, critical infrastructure entities so that they can help them be prepared for such cyber attacks and that they can make sure that they're hardening their systems to protect them in the future, recognizing the vulnerabilities that they have. CISA's gotten far off mission. They're using their resources in ways that was never intended. The misinformation and disinformation that they have stuck their toe into and meddled with should be refocused back onto what their job is, and that is to support critical infrastructure and to help our local and small businesses and critical infrastructure at the state level to have the resources and be prepared for those cyber attacks that they will face. You know, Salt Typhoon was a campaign of espionage by the PRC in China against our telecoms, where large amount of data was stolen and taken, and people's private information was taken as well. And we've also seen China and the PRC go after our critical infrastructure with the Volt Typhoon hack. And that was extremely dangerous because there was no reason for them to do that, just to steal people's data and information. The reason for them to go after that was to control our critical infrastructure, for the ability to see if they could shut down a water plant, a utility company, and that was to cripple our country. So these threats are real. CISA needs to be much more effective, smaller, more nimble, to really fulfill their mission, which is to hunt and to help harden our nation's critical infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Governor Noem, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
I think you're going to do a great job.
Thank you.
I think it's great that you're a governor and you bring that expertise to the table. So I just went through the campaign to get reelected, and it was after the Butler shooting. I'd asked people, I said, at all my events, I say, raise your hand if you think the acting director of the Secret Service is going to tell us what happened. Not one person. I said, what about Secretary Mayorkas? You know, he's running HHS. What do you think? Or Homeland Security. What do you think? I said, how about Christopher Wray? You know, head of the FBI? Not one person. Can you just talk about the importance of transparency and accountability in government and how you're going to bring that to the table?
Yeah, Senator Scott, thank you for that question, because that's what I have found across the country as well, and I know it's certainly true in my home state of South Dakota, is that people don't trust the federal government. They don't trust our leadership and this current administration that's in the White House right now to tell them the truth about what the threats really are, about our agencies and departments, when there are failures, addressing them and fixing it. The Secret Service is is one of those perfect examples. They need leadership that understands why that Secret Service was created and what it needs to do. There's two elements really that the Secret Service is tasked with, and that is protective detail and then also investigations. Yet we see investigators within the Secret Service out there investigating antiquities and other things that are off mission when they should be focused on making sure we're addressing national security events with the protocols that are necessary and protecting the individuals that they're charged with and getting that skill set and training that are necessary. That's been compromised by not having enough people there and being adequately staffed and resourced. But frankly, the leadership hasn't been honest about talking about it. We saw this with the drones over New Jersey as well, the federal government not answering the questions from the public. And when they finally got a straight answer out of President Trump, they felt reassured that somebody recognized that this was something they were questioning and that they deserved answers. My goal and my mission is to build trust. We will undertake a large job and a large duty that we have to fulfill, that the American people expect us to do by securing our border, to make sure that our nation is a nation with borders or we're no nation at all, and that we are making sure that those criminal actors that are perpetuating violence in our communities and in our cities and towns and states are removed from this country, that there's consequences for breaking the law in our country again. There has to be consequences because when Americans break the law, there's consequences. And why would we ever allow someone to come in from another country and not allow them and not have consequences or allow them to continue to go forward and to commit rape and murders and break other laws that endanger our society. So we've had over 13,000 murders that are loose in this country that have come over that border. We've had almost 16,000 rapists and sexual assault perpetuators that are loose in this country right now. 425,000 plus people have criminal convictions that are here illegally in this country that our current administration is doing nothing to round them up and get them out of our country. We will be doing that immediately, and that will be the priority. And that is one of the reasons that today the American people have lost their trust. President Trump will build it back and know that their federal government is accountable to them and is working to put America first again.
So Joe Biden completely opened our southern border and dismantled our entire immigration system. As a former governor, I know that when the federal government policies are broken and failing Americans, you see the impacts in your state, just like I did when I was a governor. And you take the steps necessary to protect the families in your state. I know you've done that. One thing you did is you talked about before, you sent troops, our National Guard, to the southern border. Can you talk more about how Biden's open border policy has affected your state and communities and the role your state resources placed in helping secure the border?
You know, we certainly have seen the effects in South Dakota that many of your states did, and I would say every state has seen the effects of an open border and the policies that have been under the Biden administration. We saw increased crime, but we also saw increased drug activity. We saw cartel and their affiliates moving into our state to proliferate trafficking, and we saw people being victimized and a lack of accountability with the federal government. So when Texas was addressing the situation and asked other governors for help, we sent help. I know many of the other governors at the time were sending law enforcement, but I made the decision that at that time that it was more appropriate to send the National Guard, that our National Guard could be activated under Title 32 and sent to assist another state from the invasion that was happening, and because the National Guard is trained for just such a mission. Because of this invasion, that it is a war zone down there with what they are going to see, the threats that they would see, and that they are trained specifically to interact with other agencies. The National Guard is used to falling in with other agencies and cooperating with them and could do that seamlessly. And their families and their communities are normalized to them being deployed. So we have in South Dakota deployed our National Guard to the southern border 8 different times. 2 of them were federal deployments that the Biden administration sent them down there. One was to send our Lakota helicopters, which were used for surveillance and the drug interdiction that was going on down there. But 6 other times I sent them under state activation to partner with Texas and other states in securing our southern border. They did security operations. They also did building of the wall and partnered with Texas, recognizing the failures of the federal government. The failures of the federal government are significant, and we've seen our families and communities devastated by those effects, by the drug epidemic, by the trafficking that's going on, the increased crime. And we recognize that just because the federal government wasn't doing their job, we could not fail our state. And I needed to protect the people of South Dakota, and the people of South Dakota were overwhelmingly supportive of these deployments and very proud of our National Guard.
When I was governor of Florida, there was a terrorist attack in Paris by Syrian refugees. So President Obama was president, and I said, I'd like to know if you're going to send refugees to my state, that you give us some background on them. You know, I assume you vetted them and tell us what's going on. You have to tell me, but you ought to tell our state law enforcement and our local law enforcement. All right, that they said, go jump in the lake.